Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Jeff and this is the Northwest Astronomer. It's July 19th, 2020 and just about 8:30 in the evening. Waiting for it to get dark in about 3 hours when I can start imaging the North American Nebula, or NGC 7000. Big target which is up near the zenith tonight. I wanted to do a video that walks through how I use the ASIair Pro to do imaging. So that little gadget is just makes astrophotography so much easier, and so I'm going to walk you through using the app from start to finish, including turning it on and getting connected, focusing, plate solving and polar alignment and setting up an imaging schedule, all the stuff you need to do to create images. So once it gets dark, I'll be back and I'll see you then. Okay, so I have turned the telescope on, the mount is on, so everything's running, telescope's in the home position, and so first thing I do is I start at the ASIair app, get through the splash screen, and look, we're lucky we actually just connected right off the bat. I have my ASIair connected to my home network, so I can use, I just connect to my home network, and that bridges to the ASIair, so I don't have to connect directly to the ASIair as a hotspot. Much more convenient, because then I can just go in the house, anywhere that I'm in the house and I'm connected to the Wi-Fi, I can still use the app with the ASIair. So that's pretty useful. This is the screen that you get when you start up, and we'll walk through this a little bit. This box here with the four little arrow buttons, that is the mount control, so I'm going to go ahead and hide that for now. And just kind of talk a little bit about the interface. On the right hand side you see a big white button. That's basically the shutter release effectively, so if you're in preview mode, press that button, it'll take a picture. You can control your binning, so starting at the top we got preview, so you can choose between focus mode, polar alignment, preview, Autorun, or live stacking. You can go to the bin button, you can select your binning on your camera. Your exposure button brings up a bunch of exposure presets all the way up to 1,000 seconds, and again, this is just in preview mode. And then the little download arrow at the bottom, that's for if you take a preview image that you really like, you can just download it and save it. Otherwise, the preview images are not saved. Up at the top, we got the three little dots. If you click on that, that brings up the main menu screen. And you have all of the various menu options on the left-hand side there. However, if we go back to the main screen, you notice those same buttons are across the top. So there's two ways to get to those. Those buttons are always across the top. And if we look at those, the one on the left, it looks like a network sign. That's the ASIair Pro settings. That lets you set whether it's in hotspot mode or station mode, whether you're 2.4G or 5G, allows you to control your power output. So if you hit the DC 12-volt output, you can assign names to each of the power outlets, turn them on or off, and control how much power is going to them. That's a new thing in the most recent update. It tells you the CPU temperature and whether or not to give you an undervoltage warning. Next one down is the camera control. So this just gives you the information on your main camera, scope, focal length. Here's where you set your gain. Importantly, for tonight, we want to turn on camera cooling, which it already is, and I've got it set at minus 10 degrees Celsius, which is what will keep it throughout the night. You can also customize the file names that the ASIair Pro saves the images as, and we've got a few advanced settings. I won't go into that because we're just going through just the basic stuff that I do every night to get up imaging. The next one down is the guide settings. Again, standard stuff here. You can control the settings on the guide camera, calibration, max dec. These are all defaults. I haven't changed any of those yet. The auto restore calibration, this is if you've already, say your telescope is mounted on a pier, or like mine, it's out here all the time. I can just reuse the calibration from the last time I did it. So that's turned on. I've already have it calibrated. For important dither settings, we want to make sure we have that turned on. So dither is set on at 2 pixels, 2-second stability, and the settle time at 15 seconds. We'll dither after each image and do RA and DEC both. So want to have dither going, so that's running. The next button is our telescope settings. This gives us our basic information about the scope. It lets you sync to the mount, and your guiding rate, things like that. This is also where you can go to home position. Next, we have the filter wheel settings. This just gives you a menu to show all of the filters that you have. So, in this case, I have LRGB, hydrogen alpha, oxygen, sulfur, and then the 8 is a opaque filter for taking darks. Tonight we're going to be focused on the narrowband HOS filters. But we're going to keep it in luminance for now when we get into polar aligning. And then recalibrate EFW. So far I've never had to do that. It senses and knows where it is all the time, so that's never a problem. Next we have the focuser settings. So this is settings for your electronic focuser. Tells you the current exact position that it's at. For example, I'm at 10054. And you can adjust your steps that it takes when you're doing fine or coarse settings. I'll show you that in a minute when you get to the focuser control, but there's a fine and a coarse adjustment, and you can set how far it actually moves with each of those. Next one down, this is the storage settings. So right now we're set to store to a USB stick that I have in there. You can also choose to store the images on the SD card. I tend to use the USB stick because when I'm done imaging, I can just pull that out, bring it to the computer, and quickly grab all the images and get them onto the computer. Optionally, I just connect to the ASIair Pro over the network and download them that way, but that's a lot slower because it's downloading it over the Wi-Fi connection. And then finally we have the 3 dots, and that just gives you what the current firmware version is, update log, etc., etc. So now we tap here, get back to the main screen. We'll go down the left side, histogram. Tap on that. That brings up a histogram of the current image you're looking at. You can set it to auto stretch, or you can manually stretch it. The focuser, that was what I was talking about. You have fine and coarse controls for the focuser, which comes in handy when we're starting to focus, which I'll show you in a minute. We have the guide graph, so that brings up a graph for the guider. Once you're in that, if you tap on the graph, that brings you up the main guiding window. We'll go into more depth on that when we actually start guiding. There's a plate solve button, which is when we actually have an image, we can plate solve it. I'll do that in a minute. And then last but not least, here we have tools, so you can put a crosshair on the screen, and we can annotate the images. Last but not least, down at the bottom, you see just some information. We have resolution of the camera, current gain setting, temperature, and the cooler setting percentage. Okay? So let's get started. So the first thing I typically want to do is get the focus set. So typically what I'll do is I'll have a batten-off mask. I usually would do this, almost always I do this with a batten-off mask. And so with that on, I just look over here, make sure I have my exposure set right. So for focusing, let's just do 3 seconds. We're in preview mode, tap the button, take a 3-second exposure, and that will download and appear. And there we got some stars. Okay, so if I had the batten-off mask, I would see my crosshairs here, and I would bring up the focuser control, and I could use those controls to center my lines, the diffraction spikes from the batten-off mask. All right, so we'll take another exposure real quick, turn off the focuser, and so now we focused, we've got an image, and the next thing we want to do is, let's go ahead and plate solve this. So once you've taken the image, that plate solve button will be there. 0.4 seconds, we solved. All right, so we know plate solving works. That's important because when we want to do polar alignment, we're going to come over here to preview, tap on PA for polar alignment. Now this walks you through the polar alignment process. It's really simple. This is the easiest polar alignment I have ever seen. And you know, I've used iPolar and other things. This thing is so simple. So set up the scope and amount. So basically you have it pointed towards Polaris, roughly. Everything's connected. We confirmed that the plate solve works in preview. That's why we did that previous shot and plate solved it. And then you tap the start button, takes an image. Plate solved, did that. We're going to hit next, and what it's going to do is going to slew automatically 60 degrees. So the scope is swinging around now. Takes another shot. Plate solves. And ready to go is we'll tap let's go. And looks like we are very close to being poor aligned. We are have a total error of only 27 arc seconds, which is pretty darn good. And for this short focal length telescope, this is plenty accurate for this, so we don't really have to do anything. If we did, right, if it wasn't accurate, that little green smiley face you see there would actually be either a frowny face or with a straight line to give you a visual indication of how good your alignment is. And then what you do is you just adjust your latitude and azimuth controls to bring that yellow circle over the green dot in the middle. And one of the things you can do is if down here at the bottom you can click check the auto box, and what it does is starts taking loops 1 second exposures, so as you adjust the circle will move you know, almost in real time as you're adjusting it until you get it lined up. Also, as you get closer, like if that yellow circle, if we were going to get it within 4 seconds of accuracy, which is, you know, in that inner circle, then it's going to zoom in to give a bigger scale to make it more sensitive, you know, a finer grained view into it. If we were more out of alignment, this would zoom out actually so that the 2-minute circle would be the middle circle, you know, the inside circle. You know, so the adjustments go from, you know, showing you a very coarse view down to a very fine view and zooms in as you get closer. That confuses a lot of people. They don't realize that it zooms in as they get closer, and that can cause some troubles for some folks. But you know, we're good right here with 27 arc seconds, so I'm going to go ahead and tap finish, and you'll see interesting. Yay, we got some fireworks. This is kind of fun. So it ranks you, basically. So based on this polar alignment, did a better job than 80.7% of other ASIair users, so it gives you kind of an indication of how you're doing against other people. So we have got a polar alignment, and so we can exit this screen by come over here, tapping on the right, switch back to preview mode. All right, so we've got focus, we've polar aligned. What do we need to do next? We probably want to slew over to our target. So to do that, now we bring that little box back up over the right. We click in the box, and this is kind of cool. It actually brings up already a list of the best objects for the evening. You can also search to find whatever you want, but you know, here we see the NGC 7000 comes up. It shows you the altitude and the time that it's at those altitudes and where you are currently. So we see that it's, you know, going to be rising almost to the zenith in another couple of hours. So we have that highlighted. We're going to select choose. That populates the little box up there with NGC, and all we do is hit go to, and the mount slews, and then we'll automatically center the target. So what it does is slews to the target, takes a picture, plate solves it, and then makes fine adjustment to get it perfectly centered. Most accurate pointing I've ever seen, right? It's very, very cool. So we are on the target, centered. Let's go ahead and take, no, let's take a 10-second image. All right, loading. And I'm going to bring up the histogram. And we can auto stretch it. Actually, you can't really see much there, so let's hit the zoom in on the histogram. And let's do some of our own stretching here. And I don't know if you can see it, but here's the North American nebula. There's the Gulf of Mexico, there's Florida. So nicely centered right where we want it. So we got our target centered where we want it to be. Cool. Right now, let's talk about guiding. So what we do is we tap on the guide settings. Just double check everything's correct. Dither settings, want to make sure dithering is on. Yep, that's good. So we go back to the main screen. We're going to tap the guide button on the left to bring up the graph, and then we're going to tap the graph. This brings up the guide window. We're going to tap the chasing arrows to start looping the camera. All right, and so ASIair Pro uses PHD2 as its guiding software. So if you know PHD2, you should be familiar with this. But we've got a guide star selected. And once you've done that, click the crosshairs. And, and then on the left here, we'll tap graph. And down on the lower right, we see it says guiding. And we see our graph coming in. We see our total RMS now. So total errors, 16 going up. Typically, when we start guiding, that's usually what I'm seeing. Is that it starts guiding, gets it's not good at first, and then it settles out. And typically, what I've been getting is usually I'm in sub-arc second guiding, and this should settle into around 0.8 or so. Sometimes it'll pop up above, it'll go a little bit higher or so, but for the most part, it's usually below 1, maybe below 2. It's basically the guider is settling at this point. So give that a couple minutes to settle. Let's go ahead and set my. One of the things you can do, in the graph, you'll see we've got you can set your deck aggression and your RA aggression by the plus and minus things. I've been using 45% for both. That seems to have been working pretty well. It's interesting that deck is still at 15. All right, looks like it's coming down now. Okay, so that takes care of auto guiding. So we're focused, we are polar aligned, we are pointing at our target, we are currently guiding, and let's see, let's just verify that our camera is set up where we want. We got the cooling is good, we got the gain is where we want it to be, guiding is good, telescope's pointed. All right. So the next thing and the last thing we want to do is actually set up our imaging run. So to do that, we come back to the main screen, we tap preview, and now we tap Autorun. And on the right hand side, you'll see the little hamburger menu. Tap that, and this is where we set up. So on the left, we have our target. It's already populated. We want to group by slot, meridian flip. So yes, we want it to do a meridian flip when we hit the meridian, because tonight it's going to do that. Actually, last night was the first time I used the automatic meridian flip feature, and it worked perfectly. It was pretty cool. You can set a delay before your first shot and an interval between shots. We don't need that tonight. But we do want to shut down the ASIair when it's done, so it'll turn itself off when the imaging run is complete. And we also want it to go to home position. Next is we set up our schedule, so you hit the plus, and we can select and set up each imaging run that we want. So for the first one, each sequence, I want to do 300 seconds. So there's a preset here for 300. You could also tap on this thing, and that lets you do manually whatever length you want. Bin 1 filter, since we're doing narrowband, we'll make these the hydrogen alphas. And let's go ahead and take 12, because that's about all the time we have for tonight. And these are lights, so we got lights. So you can specify light, bias, flat, or darks, and then it will put that in the header of the file, so that when you use a stacking program like APP or something, it'll automatically know what they are. It also puts them all in separate folders. Click on OK. So that's the hydrogen alpha. Now we want to do another one, which is 300 seconds of oxygen. We're going to repeat that as well for 12 times. And it's a light OK. And finally, we will add our sulfur. And we'll do that 12 times. Light OK. I like to double check. All right, 300 seconds on each. Hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, lights, bins, 12 each. Looks good. All right, so, and if you look down at the bottom, it gives you an estimated time to completion, 3 hours. I've noticed that seems a bit off, because it doesn't actually take into account the time for guiding to settle down after dithering and stuff, so it's going to be longer than that. Estimated size of the files, 1.1 gigabytes, 36 frames, and it's telling us that it's 2 hours, 32 minutes, 40 seconds before our target is at the meridian. So we're going to go back and verify, yep, we got 0.86 RMS on guiding. I think everything is good, so we'll go ahead and tap the white button to start, confirm that we want to shut down and go to home, and there we go. First exposure is starting, gives you a countdown. Up here on the left, you can see that 0/36 in the circle. That's how many frames you've done out of your total run. And at this point, we can go to bed. It's ready to go, and it will handle everything else all by itself. And nothing more for us to do. So that is, that's it. Good morning. It's the next day, and everything looks like it went well. The imaging run completed. The mount did its meridian flip, finished the imaging run, and looks like it went back home and shut itself down just like I told it to. I guess I will grab those images, see what we got, maybe do a quick stack with them and see what we came up with. So I'll show you the results here in a minute.